For centuries, religion has been treated as sacred, beyond question, and immune to criticism. It wears a cloak of reverence that makes doubt feel like sin. But when we strip away the rituals, symbols, and emotional weight, something startling appears. Many religious beliefs share the same traits as delusion. Ideas built not on evidence, but on fear, emotion, and the deep human need for meaning. Somewhere between truth and myth, these delusions take root. And when millions share the same illusions, they stop being seen as personal beliefs and start being called tradition. What was once an individual misunderstanding becomes a collective reality that few dare to question. One of the clearest signs of religious delusion is the belief that a person has been chosen by a supernatural power to fulfill a special mission. Many people become convinced they play a unique role in some divine plan, even when they have no evidence or actual ability to support that claim. This isn't humility or enlightenment. It's a form of grandiosity, where the ego is wrapped in a sacred narrative. The danger grows when this delusion spreads. Entire communities can rally behind someone who claims to be chosen, believing they're serving a higher purpose. History is filled with self-proclaimed prophets who led their followers into tragedy, all in the name of God's will. The delusion of a divine mission can turn an ordinary individual into a symbol, and blind faith into a dangerous force. Another powerful sign of religious delusion is the conviction that one is receiving direct messages from God or other supernatural beings. Many people genuinely believe they hear voices, see visions, or receive instructions from a divine source. In any other context, hearing voices is often recognized as a symptom of psychosis or hallucination. But when it's framed in a religious narrative, it's suddenly celebrated as a revelation or a gift. The problem is there's no reliable way to distinguish between actual divine communication and the mind's own inner dialogue, because there's no evidence that the divine side exists at all. When someone believes their personal thoughts are the literal voice of God, it gives absolute authority to their imagination. And when that authority spreads to others, it can justify almost anything, no matter how irrational or harmful. A common sign of religious delusion is the unwavering belief in miracles and supernatural abilities. Healing the sick through prayer, predicting the future, or influencing real-world events through divine intervention. These claims appear in nearly every major religion, often wrapped in stories meant to inspire faith. But no credible scientific evidence has ever shown that prayer can regrow limbs, stop natural disasters, or cure terminal illnesses. Believers often highlight rare coincidences as proof, while ignoring the countless times these prayers fail. This is a classic case of selective perception, remembering the hits and forgetting the misses. When people attribute natural events to supernatural causes, they stop looking for real explanations. This kind of belief doesn't demonstrate divine power. It exposes how easily hope can override evidence and reason. Another common sign of religious delusion is the belief that one's faith or group is constantly under attack by governments, outsiders, or evil spiritual forces. This mindset often grows into paranoia, where any disagreement or criticism is interpreted not as a different opinion, but as proof of being chosen and persecuted. In reality, many of these threats are exaggerated or entirely imagined, serving to reinforce group identity. When people believe they are surrounded by enemies, they cling more tightly to their community and reject outside perspectives. Religious institutions can exploit this fear, convincing followers that criticism equals oppression and doubt equals betrayal. Over time, this persecution complex fosters hostility, isolates believers from the broader world, and blocks critical thinking, trapping people deeper in the illusion. A clear sign that belief has crossed into delusion is when people refuse proven medical treatments or scientific facts in favor of faith-based alternatives. Around the world, there have been tragic cases where children died from treatable illnesses because their families chose to pray instead of seeking medical help. Some believers reject antibiotics, vaccines, blood transfusions, or surgery, trusting divine intervention over well-established science. This isn't just a personal choice. It has serious consequences for families, communities, and public health, allowing preventable diseases to spread. This behavior is not spiritual strength, but a dangerous denial of reality, where faith is prioritized above evidence, putting lives at risk and undermining collective well-being. Another common sign of religious delusion is the compulsive search for meaning in random events. Many believers interpret ordinary coincidences as divine messages. A clock showing 3:16 becomes a holy sign. A dream is seen as a prophecy, or a natural disaster is labeled as God's punishment. Psychologists call this apophenia, the human tendency to see connections or patterns where none actually exist. While this can offer a temporary sense of purpose or comfort, it creates a distorted view of reality, turning chance and coincidence into evidence of cosmic design. Even animals can develop superstitious behaviors, but humans build entire belief systems around these false patterns, convincing themselves that the universe is speaking directly to them. This deepens the illusion and distances believers from objective truth. Another clear sign of religious delusion is the belief that one's words or writings are divinely inspired. Many self-proclaimed prophets produce long speeches or texts during intense emotional states, claiming that every word flowed directly from a higher power. In reality, this is a psychological phenomenon, a mix of hyperfocus, emotional intensity, and subconscious activity. The human brain is fully capable of generating large amounts of content without any divine intervention. When believers interpret these outpourings as sacred revelation, they elevate private thoughts into unquestionable authority. Entire scriptures have been born from such episodes, binding generations to the words of a single unstable or overstimulated mind. Many religious believers become deeply convinced that they're living in the middle of a cosmic war between angels and demons, light and darkness. Everyday challenges are no longer seen as natural parts of life. They're reinterpreted as proof of this invisible spiritual conflict. This kind of thinking replaces rational explanations with supernatural narratives. People begin to see their neighbors, critics, or outsiders not as individuals with different views, but as agents of dark forces. Over time, this obsession can fuel paranoia, hostility, and even violence as believers convince themselves they're fighting evil when they harm others. History is full of tragic examples of how this invisible war, entirely based on belief, has led to real-world suffering. Many religious believers live under a constant weight of guilt, convinced that they are never pure or good enough in the eyes of their God. Every thought, desire, or action is judged harshly, turning normal human experiences into sins that must be cleansed. This mindset often leads to endless rituals, confessions, and self-punishment, creating a cycle of fear and temporary relief that never truly ends. Psychologists call this scrupulosity, a form of obsessive-compulsive behavior centered on religious guilt. Instead of fostering healthy self-reflection, it traps people in emotional suffering, where being human itself is seen as a moral failure. What's framed as holiness is often psychological torment disguised as virtue. A powerful sign of religious delusion is the fixation on the end of the world. Many believers become convinced that an apocalypse is imminent, that divine forces will soon destroy or cleanse the earth. This belief often leads people to hoard supplies, isolate themselves from society, cut ties with loved ones, and reshape their entire lives around a prediction that never comes true. When each doomsday date passes, they simply set a new one, trapped in a cycle of fear and false hope. At its core, this obsession is a fear of death disguised as divine knowledge. It gives a false sense of control and purpose, but rests on nothing real. Throughout history, these apocalyptic delusions have led to financial ruin, broken families, mass hysteria, and even mass suicides. Numbers don't make these prophecies true. They only make the illusion stronger. What makes religious delusion so powerful is that it doesn't remain a private belief. It becomes a collective story, passed down for generations. When millions of people share the same illusion, it begins to look like truth simply because it's old, widespread, and woven into culture. But age and popularity don't make a belief true. They only make it harder to question. When fear, guilt, and superstition are handed down as faith, entire societies end up confusing myth with reality. Recognizing these patterns isn't about attacking individuals. It's about understanding how human psychology turns uncertainty into dogma, and how those illusions shape communities, politics, and civilizations. True progress begins when we dare to question even the most sacred ideas, choosing evidence and reason over comforting illusions. That's not losing faith. It's reclaiming our freedom to think.